So, I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I need to get this wild story off my chest. The past few years have felt like I was trapped in some second-rate Netflix drama, except, unfortunately, this was my actual life. It's taken me a while to be ready to put it all into words, but here goes. A little background first. I was your typical computer science geek in college. The kind of guy who practically lived off energy drinks and could sit in front of a screen coding for 12 hours straight without blinking. I got my degree from a decent state university, not some Ivy League powerhouse or MIT, just a regular college up in the Northeast. Right after graduation, I landed a job at a small tech startup that was working on cloud security software. I won't go into too many details, gotta keep some anonymity here, but let's just say it was one of those classic five guys in a WeWork office kind of startups. Their pay wasn't amazing at first, around $65,000 a year in a city where that didn't stretch too far, but they offered stock options. More on that later. I figured it was a risk worth taking. The founders actually seemed to know what they were doing, which was more than I could say for some of the other startups I interviewed with. A lot of them were just burning through venture capital like it was monopoly money. This is where I met Amy. Not her real name, obviously. Our first meeting was straight out of a rom-com, except way more embarrassing. I was running on maybe 2 hours of sleep after an all-nighter for a big deployment. Stumbled into a local coffee shop near the office, barely functioning, and ended up spilling my entire cup of coffee all over her MacBook. I felt like the biggest idiot alive. But instead of freaking out, she just laughed it off. I felt so bad that I went ahead and bought her a brand new one. Maxed out my credit card in the process, but hey, worth it, right? Somehow, that ridiculous accident led to drinks, which led to dating. At the time, Amy was working as a dental hygienist. She was smart, funny, and way out of my league in the looks department. But for some reason, we just clicked. She actually seemed interested when I rambled about coding, and I loved hearing her horror stories about nightmare patients at the dental office. After 2 years of dating, we tied the knot. Nothing extravagant, just a small ceremony in her parents' backyard. We used most of our savings for a down payment on a little starter home in the suburbs. The commute was brutal, about 45 minutes each way, but the schools were good, and we were planning ahead. Kids came pretty quickly after that. Lily was born in 2016, and Max followed in 2019. I won't lie, those early years were rough. Balancing a demanding startup job with sleepless nights and endless diaper changes was no joke. There were days when I genuinely couldn't remember if I'd showered or not. But Amy was incredible with the kids. She cut her hours at the dental office so she could be home more, and we figured out a way to make it work. The startup was growing, slowly but steadily. We went from 5 guys crammed into a co-working space to a legit company with about 50 employees in an actual office. I worked my way up, first to lead developer, then to engineering manager. Meanwhile, my stock options kept vesting. I had around 200,000 shares at 50 cents each. Honestly, I assumed they'd end up worthless like most startup stock, but I held onto them just in case. Life was good. We had a comfortable routine, nice neighborhood, solid schools, and family vacations to Disney every other year. Nothing extravagant, but enough to make some great memories with the kids. We also had awesome neighbors, lots of young families like ours. Summers meant block parties, and Amy quickly became close with all the other moms. I'd kick back with some of the dads while our kids had playdates. It was that classic suburban dream. Then, in 2021, Mike and Jessica moved in next door. And that's when everything started going south. Mike was one of those wannabe fitness influencer types. You know the kind, constantly posting workout videos, always talking about macros and protein intake. His garage was basically a CrossFit gym. At first, he seemed like a nice enough guy. Always offering to help out with house projects, being super friendly. His wife, Jessica, worked crazy hours at a law firm in the city, so Mike was home a lot during the day. Supposedly working on his brand or whatever. Looking back, I can see all the warning signs. But at the time, I was too busy grinding through 50 to 60-hour work weeks, trying to keep our startup afloat during COVID, and taking care of 2 little kids. When you're that deep in the grind, you either don't notice the red flags, or you convince yourself they are not there. Amy started working out in Mike's garage gym. She said she wanted to get back in shape after having the kids. No big deal, right? But then, she started putting on makeup just to go work out. I mean, who does that? She'd come home after these workouts all smiley and full of energy. At first, I actually thought it was a good thing. She seemed happier, more upbeat. God, I was so naive. At first, it was just little things, like I'd come home from work and find Mike helping Amy move furniture or fixing things in our backyard. And, of course, the guy was always shirtless. Apparently, once you have abs, wearing a shirt is optional. Meanwhile, I was practically living at the office. We were in the middle of closing a huge deal with a major tech company, think FANG level. The deadlines were brutal, and I was working 14-hour days some weeks. I barely saw my kids except on weekends. At first, Amy seemed understanding. But then, the comments started. Mike says you should make more time for family. Mike thinks work-life balance is important. Mike still finds time to stay in shape and run his business. Like, okay, Amy. But Mike's business was posting gym selfies while mine was actually paying our mortgage. Then, her fitness obsession really took off. And when I say obsession, I mean full-blown, all-consuming. Our grocery bill doubled because suddenly everything had to be organic, grass-fed, and all-natural. She started ordering all these supplements Mike recommended, and before I knew it, our kitchen looked like a GNC had exploded in there. And don't even get me started on her workout schedule. It went from normal to just bizarre. At first, it was just a few times a week, at reasonable hours. Then it became a daily thing, always when I was at work or busy with the kids. She'd come home flushed, looking way too pleased with herself. Her hair would still be damp from a shower at the gym. And then, out of nowhere, she started wearing makeup to work out. Who the hell does that? Suddenly, her old Target leggings weren't cutting it anymore. She splurged on a whole new wardrobe of Lululemon gear, like she was preparing for a fashion show instead of a workout. But the real red flags started with her phone. Amy was never the type to care much about tech. Used to be, she'd leave her phone lying around without a second thought. Now, it was practically glued to her hand. Constantly texting. Always angling the screen away from me. Then she changed her password and refused to share it. We had always known each other's passwords, not because we spied on each other, but for practical reasons, like if there was an emergency with the kids. The worst part. Her entire attitude shifted. She turned aggressive over the smallest things. If I asked what she wanted for dinner, she'd snap, accusing me of never helping with meal planning. If I tried to talk about my day, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Not everything revolves around your precious startup." Real Jekyll and Hyde behavior. Then came the moment that made my stomach drop. One afternoon, I was outside playing with Max in the backyard when I glanced over and saw Mike through their garage window. He was spotting Amy while she worked out. Dude was practically pressed against her, hands all over her, supposedly helping her with form. Max saw it too. My 5-year-old, completely unfazed, waved at them and said, "Yeah, buddy. I bet they are." That was when I knew. I tried bringing it up with Amy, told her I was uncomfortable with how much time she was spending over there. Big mistake. She exploded. Started screaming that I was controlling, jealous, trying to isolate her from her friends. Threw in how I was never home anyway, so why should I care? Then, out of nowhere, she started nitpicking about money. My startup wasn't raking in huge salaries yet, we were in growth mode. But we were comfortable. Apparently, comfortable wasn't enough anymore. Suddenly, she wanted a kitchen renovation. A new car. Lily had to go to some overpriced private school. I tried explaining how startup compensation worked, lower salary now, but stock options for the future. She just stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. Weird charges started popping up on our credit card. Fancy restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel stays right here in town, because apparently, a home 20 minutes away wasn't enough. Then there was the lingerie store. Never saw any of those purchases on her. And the kids. They felt it, too. Lily, my chatty 8-year-old, became quiet. Max, who was always independent, started clinging to me, bawling whenever I left for work. One night, I caught him whispering to his stuffed animals. "Mommy and Micah having a sleepover while Daddy works." That one hit me like a freight train. Then came the night everything blew up. Our deployment at work got delayed, so I came home early. House was dark, but Amy's car was in the driveway. Music was playing from Mike's garage gym. I figured maybe this was my chance to clear the air. Talk to him. Man to man. Yeah, no. That was not what I walked into. I won't get into details, but let's just say Amy's workout routine had nothing to do with fitness. Jessica, Mike's wife, was still working late at the law firm as usual. I didn't confront them. Didn't say a word. Just took out my phone, recorded a few seconds of their session, and walked away. Then I sat in my car for an hour, just trying to process everything. Next morning, I called in sick. Met with a lawyer. He gave me a plan: act normal, gather evidence, don't let them know what I knew. That week. Hardest damn week of my life. Pretending everything was fine while they carried on with their routine, right next door. I saved the video in 6 different places. Had the divorce papers ready, evidence documented, everything planned out. I was going to confront her that weekend once my parents could take the kids. Didn't get the chance. Amy and Mike made the first move. It was just a regular Tuesday. I was deep in code reviews when my team lead pinged me. HR needs to see you. Weird, but not unheard of, especially with all the Amazon acquisition talks going on. I walk in, and there are 2 cops waiting for me. My stomach dropped. Amy had gone to the police that morning. Told them I'd hit her. Said I lost my temper during an argument over money. She even had photos, bruises on her arms and face. Next thing I knew, I was in handcuffs. In front of my entire office. Most humiliating moment of my life. Spent 48 hours in jail before my brother bailed me out. No phone, no access to my work laptop, company policy when an employee gets arrested. And I couldn't even go home. Amy had filed an emergency restraining order. I had to crash on my brother's couch, wearing an ankle monitor like a goddamn criminal. Then the company put me on administrative leave, which is just a polite way of saying, "You're fired, we just don't want the PR disaster right now." 15 years with a clean record. Not even a parking ticket. And suddenly, I was labeled a wife-beater. My face was all over the local news. Local tech executive arrested for domestic violence. Yeah, that did wonders for my job prospects. And the worst part? This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment lie. Amy and Mike had been planning this for weeks. I found out later they had been setting me up, documenting every argument we had, twisting normal conversations into evidence. Taking pictures of any little bruise Amy got from her usual clumsy self, making it look like abuse. Even got some of the neighborhood moms involved. Women I'd grilled burgers for at BBQs, moms whose kids had played at our house. Suddenly, they were writing statements about how they'd always suspected I was abusive. How they'd heard us arguing, yeah, because Amy was screaming about CrossFit at the crack of dawn. One even swore she saw me grab Amy's arm aggressively in the driveway. Reality. I was helping her carry groceries because she'd sprained her wrist, probably with Mike. But none of that mattered. Because now, CPS was involved. And Amy had emergency custody of the kids. I went from seeing my kids every day to being reduced to supervised visits, 2 hours, every other weekend. Do you have any idea how messed up it is to visit your own children in some sterile government office while a social worker watches and takes notes like you're an experiment? Had to cash out some of my stock options just to afford a lawyer. Thankfully, company policy let me keep the rest since I'd been there over 5 years. Small mercies, I guess. Ended up moving into a depressing little studio apartment near my brother's place, about all I could afford between legal fees and child support. The place smelled like the last tenant had housed 50 cats and never cleaned up after them. Lily wouldn't even look at me during visits. Found out later that Amy told her I was sick in the head and needed to get better before I could come home. Meanwhile, Max would just cry and ask why I didn't love them anymore. Try explaining false domestic violence allegations to a 5-year-old. Actually, don't. It's impossible. Lost most of my friends, too. Funny how fast people disappear when you're accused of something like that. The few who stuck around were mostly guys from work, people who had seen firsthand how much I sacrificed for my family. They knew the truth, but their hands were tied with all the legal chaos. Meanwhile, Amy and Mike weren't even pretending to hide it anymore. Mike moved out of his house, and Jessica, his now ex-wife, had her own mess to deal with after finding out the full story. So, Amy and Mike were out in the open, posting gym selfies, going to restaurants, acting like some perfect couple. Using my child support payments to fund their little love story. I had to start driving Uber on weekends just to make ends meet. Went from leading engineering teams to picking up drunk college kids at 2 a.m. The irony? Some of my passengers were interns from my old company. Try holding it together while a 22-year-old raves about the amazing project you got fired from. Remember those stock options I mentioned? The ones I had to partially cash out just to afford a lawyer? Yeah, this is where things get crazy. But first, let me paint you a picture of rock bottom. I was crammed into a 400-square-foot apartment, working 2 jobs. Junior dev at some corporate hellhole during the day, the only place that would hire me with pending DV charges. Driving Uber at night. Living on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches just to make child support payments. Still holding on to about 200,000 shares of my old company's stock, though I couldn't sell them due to lock-up periods. The startup was surviving, doing okay, not great. We built security software to help companies manage their cloud infrastructure. Boring tech stuff, I know. But then, Log4j happened. For non-tech people, imagine someone finding a backdoor into every company's systems through a tiny vulnerability nobody noticed. That's Log4j. And our software? It was really good at detecting and fixing it. Right place, right time. One random Tuesday, I check my phone between Uber rides and see 50 missed calls. The startup's getting acquired by Amazon Web Services. Stock is jumping from $4 to $247 per share in the buyout. Did the math at least 20 times, convinced I was hallucinating. 200,000 shares. Times $247 per share. 49.4 million dollars. Before taxes. First thing I did. Threw up. Second thing. Called my lawyer. Third thing. Threw up again. And here's where it gets fun. The acquisition made local headlines. Local tech startup acquired by Amazon for $2.1 billion. Buried somewhere in the article? My name, as one of the early employees. Guess who reads local tech news? Amy's lawyer. Within 24 hours, I get an email from Amy. First contact since the arrest. All sweet and concerned, like we were still best friends. Hey, hope you're doing well. Been thinking about our situation. Maybe we should talk about what's best for the kids. Translation, I heard you're rich now. Let's chat. Didn't reply. Just took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer. Then went back to my Uber shift. Couldn't make any sudden moves until the acquisition finalized, still had a 3-month closing period, and I didn't need Amy screwing things up. But she wasn't done. Next day, I stopped by my usual coffee shop. And guess who's there? Mike. Totally a coincidence, right? Acts all buddy-buddy. Hey man, water under the bridge. We all make mistakes. Amy's really sorry about everything. Oh, you mean sorry for accusing me of beating her? Sorry for getting me arrested? Sorry for taking my kids and torching my career? Or, sorry that I just became a multimillionaire? Such a convenient change of heart. Kept driving Uber right up until the acquisition closed. The looks on people's faces when they recognized me from the news? Priceless. Hey, aren't you that guy who? Yep. That's me. Your millionaire Uber driver. The day the money hit my account was surreal. After taxes and fees, I walked away with about $28 million. First thing I did. Bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a gated community. Nothing flashy, but secure and in the kids' school district. Then I set up trust funds, $2 million each for Lily and Maximum. They can't touch it until they're 25. Started a small software consulting business, mostly to keep busy and have a steady income source outside the AWS windfall. Hired a few of my old teammates, guys who had stuck by me through everything. Then Amy made her move. Got served with papers at my new house. She wanted half the acquisition money, claiming we were still, technically married, when the stock value increased. Plus, back child support recalculated on my new net worth. And, of course, primary custody, because, obviously, a violent abuser shouldn't have millions to spend on his kids. The irony? If she hadn't set me up, if she hadn't forced me to cash out shares early to pay for lawyers, she might have actually had a case. But there's a funny little thing about documented domestic violence accusations. She showed up at my house one Sunday morning. Hadn't seen her in person since the court hearings. Gone were the designer Lululemon outfits. She was in modest Target clothes, barely any makeup. Her eyes were red and puffy like she'd been crying. "Can we talk?" she asks, voice soft. It's about the kids. It's always about the kids with her. Funny how the kids weren't her priority when she was busy wrecking their dad's life. But I let her in. Had security cameras running in every corner, phone recording in my pocket. Trust issues? No. Just experience. She sat there in my living room, eyes red, face streaked with tears, spinning this whole sob story about how Mike had manipulated her. Apparently, he convinced her I was cheating. Projection, much? Told her I was planning to leave her broke, take the kids, and disappear. Yeah, that's rich, coming from the guy who literally helped frame me for abuse. She sobbed about how controlling he was. How he made her file those charges. She was scared and confused. Oh, sure, Amy. Those bruises just magically appeared. Those witness statements wrote themselves. Then came the kicker. I know I messed up, she sniffled. But I'm still legally your wife. The stock value increased while we were married. I deserve half, for the kids. Jesus Christ. This woman had me arrested. Took my kids. Nearly destroyed my entire career. And now she wanted half my money? The audacity was almost impressive. She kept going, eyes locked on me, gauging my reaction. The kids miss you, she whispered. We could be a family again. Start fresh. Yes. Because nothing says fresh start like false domestic violence charges. She had clearly rehearsed this speech. Talked about therapy. Doubt. Claimed she had realized her mistakes. Sure. Said Mike had been the real abuser. Irony at its finest. Even tried the nostalgia trick, bringing up our first date at that little coffee shop, like reminiscing about overpriced lattes was going to make me forget everything. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. Turns out she had told her lawyer she was attempting reconciliation. Trying to plant a paper trail. Probably setting up some bogus narrative about us working things out so she could pounce when the money hit. And then she leaned into the pity angle. It's been so hard, she sighed. Living in a tiny apartment. yeah. Karma's a bitch. Working extra shifts at the dental office. Oh no, actual work. Can barely afford the kids' activities. Maybe stop blowing money on $200 leggings. I never wanted any of this, she whispered. Mike made me think you were this monster. Right. Because that's exactly how it went. Cheat for months. Orchestrate false abuse allegations. Get me arrested at work. Take my kids. Spend my child support money on gym gear. Lie to everyone we knew. But here's the best part. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her gallery, and held it up. Photos of the kids. Recent ones I hadn't seen. Lily at her dance recital. Max playing soccer. All the moments I had missed. They need their dad, she said softly. We can fix this. Translation: I'm broke. You're rich. Let's pretend I didn't completely destroy your life. And then, boom. The real bombshell. I've talked to my lawyer, she said, voice shaking just enough to sound vulnerable. If we can't work this out, well, I have rights. There it was. The real reason she was here. The stock value increased during our marriage, she continued, watching me carefully. And with your history of domestic violence. There it was. The threat behind the tears. Classic Amy. I let her finish her little performance. Even handed her a box of tissues. Not the fancy soft ones. The cheap, rough ones. Then, calmly, I said, I'll have my lawyer contact yours. And showed her to the door. The second she left, I called my attorney. Turns out Amy had been busy. She had already filed for emergency spousal support, claiming a share of the acquisition money. Tried to modify the custody agreement, arguing that my newfound wealth made me a flight risk. Even reached out to some of my old co-workers, hoping to dig up dirt. And the best part? She was still posting inspirational quotes on Instagram about rising above negativity and finding your truth. That, plus gym selfies with her new trainer. Guess Mike got replaced. But here's where it gets really good. Court date was set for last month. Amy showed up looking like she had raided the Salvation Army. Plain dress, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. Real struggling single mom vibes. And she brought the kids. Against court orders, mind you. Sat them right in the front row, using them as props in her little show. Her lawyer went first. Some slick, overpriced guy in a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He painted Amy as this devoted wife who sacrificed her ambitions to support my tech career. Argued that she deserved half my money because her emotional support was crucial to my success. Oh, yeah. Such great emotional support. Nothing says I believe in you like false DV charges. Then they dragged the abuse allegations back into it. Tried to paint me as this volatile tech bro who got lucky with stocks and might take his millions and disappear. Even had the balls to suggest I was dangerous now that I had unlimited resources. Meanwhile, my lawyer, Greg, absolute legend, just sat there, scribbling notes like he was bored out of his mind. Amy kept sneaking glances at me, probably wondering why we weren't panicking. Then it was our turn. Greg stood up, straightened his tie, and said, Your Honor, before we present our defense, we'd like to submit new evidence that has recently come to light. Cue the security camera footage. See, Amy didn't just show up that one time with her fake reconciliation act. She had been coming by almost every day while I was at work. And guess who was with her half the time? Mike. The cameras caught everything. Amy and Mike, sitting in his car outside my house, rehearsing her emotional speech. Amy planting fake evidence in my mailbox, letters she had written to herself, claiming she was afraid of me. Dated months before the DV charges. Even caught them laughing about how easy it would be to take half my money. But wait, there's more. Remember those bruises? The ones she used to frame me? My Ring doorbell caught her and Mike staging those too. Back when they were still neighbors. Video showed them using makeup to create fake bruises. Taking photos. Even practicing her scared wife face. The judge's reaction. Priceless. Amy looked like she was about to vomit. Mike, who had been subpoenaed, kept trying to leave. Bailiff wouldn't let him. And then Greg dropped the nuclear bomb. Turns out, Amy and Mike had a pattern. 2 other guys. Different cities. Both successful tech workers. Both falsely accused of abuse. Both taken to the cleaners in their divorces. Amy and Mike had a system. And the real MVP? Jessica, Mike's ex-wife. She had been building a case against them for months. And she came to court with a whole damn file. Emails, texts, and bank records, all laid out in black and white, showing exactly how Amy and Mike split their scam money from before. By the time Greg finished presenting the evidence, Amy's lawyer looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. The guy started backpedaling so fast, I half expected him to trip over his own feet. Your Honor, my client may have been misguided about certain events. The judge wasn't buying a word of it. He called a recess, came back an hour later looking absolutely furious, and wasted no time shutting it all down. Amy's claim on the stock money? Denied. On top of that, she was ordered to cover my legal fees. And the cherry on top. The judge referred the whole case to the DA for possible fraud charges. But the real win? The custody ruling. The moment the judge saw those videos of Amy and Mike scheming to con me, he ordered an emergency custody evaluation. Now, the kids are staying with me while Amy is under investigation for perjury and fraud. And Mike? The guy bolted the second court ended. I mean, full-on sprinted for the parking lot like he was starring in his own action movie. Too bad for him, Jessica's new boyfriend, a cop, was waiting outside. Talk about instant karma. Now for the final update. It's been 3 months since that courtroom showdown, and a lot has happened. First off, Amy and Mike got arrested. Turns out when you run fraud schemes across state lines, the feds take an interest. The FBI had been quietly building a case for weeks. Turns out, I wasn't their only victim. 3 other guys, tech workers, just like me, got hit with the same playbook. Fake domestic violence charges, rigged divorces, wiped out financially. Amy and Mike had this scam down to a science. The kids are with me full-time now. Not gonna lie, it's been a tough adjustment. 2 traumatized kids and a dad figuring out how to be a full-time parent. Chaos. Absolute chaos. First week alone, I managed to burn dinner 3 times, sent Lily to school with mismatched shoes, and completely forgot Max's show and tell day. But we're getting there. I hired a child psychologist who specializes in cases like this, parental alienation. Dr. Sarah, not sharing her full name, has been incredible. Lily finally admitted that Amy and Mike coached her to say she was scared of me. Max was told I didn't want to see them anymore because I cared about money more than them. Who does that to their own kids? Thankfully, the house situation worked out. Moved us to a good neighborhood with solid schools, nothing too flashy, just comfortable. Max got his dream gaming room, the kids obsessed with Minecraft, and Lily designed her own bedroom, which is, as expected, aggressively pink. Got a security system that could probably rival Fort Knox, but hey, it helps them feel safe. Work-wise, I shifted gears. Started working from home full-time. My consulting company's doing well, but priorities have changed. The kids come first. I built a solid team to handle most of the projects so I can focus on being dad. Funny how life works. Spent years chasing success in tech, but now my biggest achievement. Making Max laugh at my terrible dad jokes. As for Amy, she's looking at 15 to 20 years behind bars. Fraud, perjury, and a bunch of other charges I can't even keep track of. Her lawyer tried cutting a deal, but the feds weren't interested. Apparently, they take a real issue with organized fraud targeting tech workers. Who knew? Mike. He folded the second he realized how serious this was. Guy actually cried in FBI custody. Threw Amy under the bus so fast it was almost impressive. Claimed she was the mastermind and he was just a poor, manipulated pawn. Total nonsense. He's still looking at a minimum of 10 years. Surprisingly, Jessica, Mike's ex, has been amazing through all of this. She's been working with the feds to build the case and has also been great with the kids. They remember her from when we were neighbors, and she stops by sometimes to bake cookies with them. No drama, just genuine kindness for two kids who've been through hell. The money situation sorted itself out. Got proper trusts set up for the kids, invested in some safe, boring things my financial advisor recommended, and even started a foundation to help fathers fighting false domestic violence charges. So far, we've already helped 3 dads get their kids back. As for dating? Yeah, that's a hard pass right now. Beyond the trust issues, I'm not bringing anyone new into my kids' lives until they are truly ready. They've had more than enough adult drama for one lifetime. Some unexpected good did come from all this, though. Remember my old company? The one that fired me after the false charges. Their CEO personally called to apologize. Even offered me a consulting gig. I turned it down, but he also wrote a public letter clearing my name. Didn't need it at that point, but it still meant something. Lily's doing better in school now. Teachers say she's smiling again, actually engaging in class. She's even joining the science club next semester. Looks like she got her dad's nerd genes after all. Max is still Max, an unstoppable ball of energy with a heart too big for his own good. He's decided he wants to grow up to be a game developer who helps people. I don't even know what that means, but it's adorable. Even the neighbor who wrote that false statement against me came by last week to apologize. Turns out, Amy fed her a bunch of fake evidence to convince her I was dangerous. We're not gonna be friends or anything, but at least that's one less person looking at me like I'm some kind of monster. Not every day is easy. The kids still have nightmares. Lily panics if I'm out of sight too long. Max asks at least once a week if I'm sure I want them living with me. But we're healing, one day at a time. TLDR? Ex-wife and CrossFit bro. Facing serious federal time. Got my kids back. Focusing on being a dad and helping other fathers in the same fight. Edit, holy shit, this blew up. Thanks for all the support throughout this whole mess. Edit 2, for everyone asking about the foundation, yes, it's real, but no, I'm not sharing links. Not looking to dox myself. Edit 3, if anything major happens with Amy's case, I'll update. But for now, I'm focusing on my kids and our fresh start. Final thought, I changed some small details for privacy, but the core story. 100% real. If you're a father going through something like this, document everything, get a damn good lawyer, and don't give up. Your kids need you.